Ooh, man, that face is creepy. What's going on, guys? TheAireaidLord is here with another Walking Dead review for season 9. This one's going to be for episode 10, entitled Omega. And I don't think Omega. I was going to say it was an Omega episode, but that's not really an adjective. It's a part of the Greek alphabet, part of Alpha, Beta, and that whole thing. There's no Omega. I mean, there you hear the Alpha Omega thing, but like you don't really. There's no Alpha. There's no Omega. There's an Alpha, but there's no Omega in terms of the characters in the show. Unless we're introduced to some new character, which this episode very gladly took up the mantle in doing. Man, I was pretty surprised. Just compared to how they've handled villains in the past, I don't think they've ever taken a villain and done this approach, because you had Lydia from the previous episode, and she was being interrogated, and she wasn't. Um, it was a very normal interrogation where the person being interrogated doesn't. They're not giving anything up. The aggressor is trying to either pound it or scream it out of them using over aggressive tactics, and Daryl was doing that and it wasn't working. So then he pitted Henry in the other jail cell to kind of talk to her and get her to talk and say things about herself. But she still seemed standoffish, still seemed like she was looking for her opportunity to run away. There was the scene where Daryl's trying to give her water for her the pills that she had. I guess she had an ear infection or something. And she tries to hit him with like a hook. And that's when Daryl sees the scars that are along her arm. So clearly, for a good portion, she was really trying to reject everything. Because again, like, what was eventually revealed was that her mother was brainwashing her into accepting the world in a certain shade, meaning that you have to be as animalistic and ruthless as possible in order to take on the world. At one point, Rick did have this mentality, and a few others did as well. But I think this is a extreme version of that, in the fact that you're wearing zombie skins and being very animalistic, cutthroat in terms of your approach to people and the world as it stands. Now, what I was talking about, the approach, I mean, we have a lot of flashbacks in this episode, which we didn't get. If you think about, there's only one villain group that I remember when they introduced the group the second time around, which meaning the second episode in which they were appeared in, we had those flashbacks. And I don't know if you guys remember, but it was actually the Terminus people, Gareth, Mary, the group of the termites, the cannibals. Back in season 5, if you remember No Sanctuary, they had remember the then and the now, like they had the black screen with the white text, and it had a past present perspective. And it showed Gareth and his people being terrorized by some random group who had taken over that train yard, and it molded their way of thinking into being only about themselves and to eating people and just saying, screw taking people in and trying to help people. We were screwed over by doing that, so we're not going to do that anymore. That's the only time I remember a flashback being utilized. We didn't have any with the governor. We didn't have any with Negan. So theoretically, our two biggest villains of the series, really the governor and Negan, are the two like quintessential Walking Dead villains. When you think of like the big villains in The Walking Dead, you think about the guy with the eye patch, the governor, and then you think of Negan with his barbed wire baseball bat. Like those are like the marketing. If you're marketing The Walking Dead, those are the ones you put above Rick and Daryl and the whole crew. To promote your show. And we didn't have one flashback at all. Now Negan is still alive, of course. There's still a possibility that we have a developing. But that was always something that frustrated me, because in season 7 and 8, Negan had spoken often. Especially in season 8, he talked to Simon about, when we found this place, it was anarchy, and then I came in and I brought order and security, and that's what the saviors are. We save people, and I created this this lifestyle, this society, this city-state that now imposes its will over others. And I would have liked to have seen a flashback where Simon was the leader of the Saviors and Negan comes in and has to take... Like, basically, if any of you have read the comic Here's Negan, it talks about that. It talks about him before the apocalypse started, and then it brings him all the way up to when he finds the sanctuary and starts it. Now, the events are a little different. The comic and the TV show, like, some of the events are different. Like, in the Here's Negan, for example, Negan encounters Dwight on the road, which we know doesn't happen because Dwight is with Sherry. They were just living there at the sanctuary and crossed paths. Most likely they were there when Simon took over, or they were with Simon's group eventually, and then Negan came in. So, but we don't know anything about that. And we had received these pieces of information too little too late. Like, for example, the fact that Simon was the one we finally figured out in the second to last episode of season 8, when everything was winding down anyway. We learned that Simon was indeed the one who murdered all of the men at the Oceanside. So then, in those first episodes of season 9, the Oceanside were rounding up some of the saviors that were loyal to Simon, such as Arat, and they were executing them. But we never see, that's a flashback I would love to see. It would probably be very brutal, very, very brutal and dark, but I would love to see a flashback to when the Oceanside was trying to fight back. Like, when they tried to fight back, and they lost, and then Simon, Arat, and his crew executed the men of the Oceanside. Like, I'd love to see Netanya, Sydney, Beatrice, like some of the known name, the named Oceanside people and their react. You know, you'd have to have, crying and sobbing. I mean, I'm sure, everyone would have to bring their A game. Very much similar to the head bashing scene with Glenn and Abraham. Probably very similar to that. I mean, that's just what the Saviors did back then. But yeah, like, I guess I'm trying to bring it home that, like, these flashbacks were very effective. Not only were they effective, but they weren't consistent, because Lydia is imagining how it was happening from her messed up point of view. And then when Henry and Daryl are starting to bring her back to reality, like when she's starting to realize it, when Henry brings her out of the cell and she's kind of flirting with him, and then they hear the baby, like, she's starting to become human again. She's not like being animalistic. She's not being just this savage dead, walking like a dead walker. Like, she's joking around and flirting with a guy and just normal human stuff. And I think it shocks her that she still has those qualities inside. And then she's like, put me back in the, like, during the episode reaction, which I know you guys can't see those anymore, but I was literally like, Henry, what are you doing? Because he was letting this girl out of her cell, and she nearly took a hammer and smashed him over the head and tried to get away. Now, it was revealed that Daryl was hiding behind a shed, waiting, like, just watching the whole thing. So if Lydia tried to escape, Daryl would have just tackled her, most likely. But it didn't happen like that. Like, she basically, like, turned around, and after that happened, the next morning when Henry comforted her, she revealed, like, the truth. Like she's like, it wasn't my dad who was the abusive one. It was actually my mother. And the situation that they were in, I mean, how the Whispers started, I don't know about the larger group at hand, but I know that from that flashback, Alpha and Frank, this character doesn't exist in the comics. I just wanted to say, we never know who Lydia's dad is and who's Alpha's husband was in the comics. They never talk about it. And they just gave him an arc in one episode that was pertinent to a character, because Lydia at first thought that it was the dad who was the abusive one, but it was actually the mother, because she saw the situation that was breaking down inside that shelter that they were in Baltimore. I guess that's where the Whispers originated, Baltimore, Maryland, which makes sense since the show is there in Virginia, so one state over. But it's interesting that she had, like, the flashback was different based on the psychosis, so they had to, like, film it as she imagined it. which is very intriguing. It's very intriguing that they had like almost like a fake flashback, and then they like amended it as the episode went on. And by the end of the episode, like she's kind of come around. She's like, yeah, like, you know, and then she gives Daryl the information, and they really warm up to her. Like, I think Daryl and Henry are both kind of like, yeah, it seems like she's coming around and she could be a productive member of their community. Now, of course, you know, you wrap up one nice plot line just for it to be knocked down by another. Of course, as soon as Lydia comes around and they're kind of warming up to her, then Alpha and her crew come knocking on the gates, demanding for her daughter, which is funny because Lydia said that in their culture, when somebody goes missing or dies, they just move on. They don't do anything about it. But I guess since, you know, that's the thing though, because as much as Alpha would want you to believe that she's an animal that just has no principles, the fact that she's at the gates of the hilltop demanding for her daughter, it shows that she still has some humanity, because it's her last connection to her old life. And yeah, that's the thing. If it was anyone else, even this guy, even Beta, that's his name. All right, anyway. Even if it was Beta, I don't think she would come back. For him. Her daughter that's the only person in the whole world that she would have done that for. And you know, it's frustrating because she really had, until she captured Alden and Luke, she had no leverage. She had absolutely no leverage, because Daryl, they had a few previews for next week's episode, and Daryl says like, we can light your ass up right now. I mean, this is a society that's been thriving for 6+ years. So, you know, with the time jump. So they have, I don't know if they still have guns that are operational, but they definitely have arrows and stuff like that can long range I mean, they're all just standing there. Like, they have the high ground from the hilltop, so they can just pick them off. So, but the thing is, it's going to complicate things because, again, like, I mean, you don't want to just kill everyone there, and then there might be another force that could try to invade. I mean, again, like when there's that's the thing though. The at least where the episode ended off, Alpha and the Whisperers, they gave up the one thing that made them frightening. They used the zombie masks to blend in, but since they're just standing there in the, like, it's not even dark out. They're standing in the sun, and everyone could see them. It's not a very advantageous situation. So I don't know how, like, they don't have, it's not like, the thing is, it's not like the Saviors, because the Saviors could drive up to your gates with a military truck, and there's, 20, 40 guys with AK-47s, grenades, grenade launchers, SMGs. Negan's got a baseball bat with barbed wire. Like, they approached you saying, yeah, we've got firepower. They were a militia. They were basically like Mad Max, like a militia of post-apocalyptic thugs. But this group, I mean, I know Alpha has a double-barrel shotgun, but they don't have the firepower and that advantage. They have a different advantage. They blend. They're almost like more guerrilla fighters, which is better for their masks and coveted attitude. But they don't have that braggadocious, cocky swagger that the Saviors had to just drive up to your gates. Like when Negan did last mid-season finale, when he just drove his truck right through the gate, and then they shot the grenade launchers over Alexandria. Like, the Whisperers can't do that. So if they didn't have Alden and Luke as hostages, I don't know how. Like, they would have to probably sneak in at night and just kill people in their sleep. Like, that would probably be their strategy. So, and then, of course, man, Alpha's face. Oh, my God. Maybe I'll change out this picture of Beta and put her creepy-ass fucking face. But then again, I don't know if I want to look at that. And I don't know if you... I mean, they did a great job with the makeup. I mean, she looks disheveled. I mean, and when she's talking, like, her teeth are all fucked up. I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you live like a savage, you kind of have to look like a savage, right? So, and I like it. And having been a fan of the comics, and these group of characters were the last ones I was waiting to be adapted that I was exciting for. Lydia, Alpha, and Beta. And now that I've seen Lydia and Alpha, I'm obviously very impressed with their work. Haven't seen Beta yet. I know he's going to be in this second half at some point. I don't know when. But he will be coming around, so I'll be interested to see how Ryan Hurst adapts him. Mainly because I know he's such a big, brutish, tough guy. Like, he's really the muscle. Like, he's the muscle. He's basically the Simon of the Whisperers, where Simon was the Negan's muscle, his right-hand man, as Negan once said. So, that'll all be interesting. So, we'll have to see where things go. I know it was kind of infuriating, how trusting Henry was, and I know that's more indicative of the way he's been raised. And I know he's basically really embracing his role as Carl 2.0, especially there was some brief flirting with them. Apparently, the Walking Dead Twitter page posted this, that in the comics, the scene where Lydia licks Carl's eye socket, where he got his eye blown off, they can't do that, obviously, because Henry has two eyes, but they did it with the worm scene, which was the closest they could get, I suppose. I mean, I don't know where that relationship will go. The thing is, because, will Henry fight for her? Because, what's your option at this point? They have Alden and Luke captive. It seems like she just wants to make a trade. They're hostages for the one they have. So this is a new person. But in the preview, Daryl said you can't have her. So, I mean, I don't know, but that's gutsy. I mean, someone you just kind of took in and kind of just became friends with, and just to say, you can't have her, you're really throwing down the gauntlet there. So we'll have to see. I mean, I liked the different way that this episode was run, and I think that's what I was trying to explain at the beginning of this vlog. I really wish they had done this for season 7 and 8. And I think if they had, it would have steered, there wouldn't have been as many people leaving. I know the brutal nature of how Glenn and Abraham were killed. I know that steered people away regardless. But I think if I hate to say it, if Angela Kang was in charge of this show when Negan first was introduced, I think it would have been a little different. I think we would have, because we get that, we get the human aspect. We really, dived into Lydia's character. And then even Daryl's character. Because, season 7 and 8, Daryl was just grief-stricken after what he did for Glenn. And, he didn't have much going on personally with himself. But this whole thing with Lydia, you find out that, wow, her and Daryl have a connection because they both had abusive parents. Daryl's not really willing to admit it, but you get more of that human side of Daryl we didn't see during the Saviors arc, and it's what made The Walking Dead great, and I'm glad that they're going back to their roots, and this is what I was hoping for from Angela Kang, and I'm still giving her a big thumbs up for what she's doing so far. Still going strong, and it's keeping me interested, and it's perfect the way she's painting things out, and I'm really gonna have to see how season 9 ends. Who survives, who dies, and then I'll be able to kind of give my overview and say, yeah, she did a good job with her first full season of the show, and give her a letter grade, I suppose, from my perspective after that. So that'll be it for my review for episode 10. Let me know what you guys thought about it. With how interesting the show is getting, I don't know, I'm mulling over bringing the reaction videos back briefly, potentially just for the season finale. That's the one I'm probably going to do for this episode 16 or even 15, because I've heard people saying that, all the people that follow the Spoiling Deads page, they said that episode 15 will be climactic, as will 16, so I should probably do a reaction for both. So maybe I'll do a reactions for 15 and 16 for you guys to witness, and I suppose I'll judge how into it you guys are, how many people are still kind of following the show. But I'd say this episode is really strong. It's a reason to be excited about it, and the new actresses are doing, Samantha Morton and Cassidy McClincy doing really well. I think they're great additions to the show. I mean, having those scenes with Daryl and or Norman Reedus / Daryl and doing it was a phenomenal job for being on so quickly. And again, it gets back to that human aspect, which is what I like. I like that about the show. So yeah, we'll see where things go from here. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you for next week's episode. But I might also do a vlog about something else later this week, depending what gets released, as always. So thank you, and I'll see you guys later.